From the Foundation Studio on Biloxi's foggy Back Bay, welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday the incredible world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. I want to thank you for joining us on the SuperTalk Mississippi Radio Network or on SuperTalk TV at C Spire TV. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's March 28, 2022. 3 months already gone by. Man, I mean, I say it a lot, but man, time is really, really flying. You know, I'm an early riser. I get up a lot, sometimes as early as 3:30 in the morning. I just love my mornings. That's when I do a lot of reading and enjoy the mornings. But when I looked at my phone this morning, when I got up, it had that dense fog advisory. But when I looked outside in the dark, you could still see the lights on the other side of the bay. It was super clear, but off in the distance, you could see that wall of fog starting to come in. And by the time I got a cup of coffee, the fog was already here. It's that time of year. It makes me think about tuna fishing. You know, the last time I went tuna fishing this time of year, it was super dense fog. We left Biloxi's Back Bay, headed out, and didn't even clear up till we got to Horn Island. I don't like running in the fog. I don't know if I know many people who like running in the fog. It can really mess you up. But speaking of tuna fishing, we actually had a window. We thought this weekend we were going to head out Saturday. My son Jordan and I had been watching the weather really, really closely. And it looked like we were going to be able to get there. The weather has to be perfect this time of year, though, because these fronts and the wind situation and the sea situation, when you're 100 miles offshore this time of year, you don't want to have a smooth ride out and a terrible ride back, or actually for it to get rough while you're there. So it has to be the perfect situation of weather and seas. And we didn't get that, so we had to cancel the trip. But the boat's ready. The boat's ready for next time, and hopefully to come in the next few days. As a result, Jordan went turkey hunting, and he actually got onto a couple of turkeys, and he was texting me during this hunt. You know how it works. Telling me about the gobbling, and sent me a little video along the way. It was really awesome to kind of watch it through his eyes. He had one at about 50 yards, but it was near a food plot, so he was hoping that it would come out and strut a little bit. It didn't, but it was still exhilarating. And that's the beauty of the outdoors. That's why sometimes it's not so important to pull the trigger. Just being out there and experiencing it, that's what it's all about. By the way, if you don't know this, we put all the videos for SuperTalk Outdoors on Facebook and YouTube. You can go to our SuperTalk Outdoors Facebook page and follow us. We really appreciate it that you're listening, and would appreciate you kind of sharing it with your friends who love the outdoors. Now let's move over to my friend James Cummings. James is the Executive Director of Wildlife Mississippi. He's one of the country's foremost experts on conservation practices. He lives right here in Mississippi and works his tail off for this great state. Without any further ado, let me just say good morning to you, my friend. How you doing, James?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on the show. Thank you.
Well, look, we're going to get an update about the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that we have talked a lot about on this show. I just joined Paul Gallo this morning, and I'll be spending some time with Gerard this afternoon. But the reality is, we made some great progress. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But I actually want to, since you haven't actually joined me on SuperTalk Outdoors, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about James Cummings and specifically Wildlife Mississippi and the work that you guys are doing. So where did your love of conservation come from, James?
So, when I was born and raised in Greenville, and you made me think about trying to getting out on that Mississippi River and fog with towboats. So you brought back some memories with your comment earlier. But I grew up there on the hunting and fishing in the oxbows there, and going to my grandparents' place around Winona, which we still have the farm there. And my mother's brother was a guy named Jack Herring that was executive director of the Mississippi Department of Wildlife Conservation, as it was called back then. So really kind of growing up and being around that is really what and being on private land and on the farm, and that's really what stimulated a lot of that. And my father, he was a math teacher at Greenville High School, but he was also very much interested in botany and plants and stuff. So kind of been maybe it's in our genes, I guess. So
what did you ever expect, though, that your passion would turn into you being one of the foremost experts in the United States on conservation efforts? I mean, it's been an amazing journey for you, hasn't it?
It's been great, and I'm currently I currently chair the Federal Policy Committee for the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation in Washington, and co-chair the Conservation Policy Committee for the Boone and Crockett Club, and I'll actually be the next president of the Boone and Crockett Club. And that's the oldest conservation in North America. It was founded in 1887 by Theodore Roosevelt. So, but no, I would have never, you never know where life carries you sometimes, but, it's been a lot of fun, and it's really, I ended up, doing something very different than most people that are majoring in fisheries and wildlife. I ended up working in the United States Senate for Senator Cochran, and really, learning how policy works and how to make it work for you, and quite frankly, how to make it work for Mississippi. So, so it's been a pretty cool journey, and it doesn't seem to end, and I don't want it to end. It's a fun ride. So
when you say that, I can't help but think about the Farm Bill and how significant it was to America. You got a chance to see that up close and personal, didn't you?
We really have, and this weekend we've had here at our place in Amory at the farm, we've got folks from Ducks Unlimited, the Nature Conservancy, Kevin Norton. He was the chief of NRCS under President Trump, and they're here. We're spending the middle of the day really kind of planning on what we want to see in the next Farm Bill and how we can benefit practices that are important to Mississippi and the Southeast. And they're trying to chase turkeys in the mornings and evenings, and the turkeys aren't being as cooperative. The hunting is great. The shooting is a little slow. So,
well, yeah, that video that my son, it was a real short video, but I should have probably shown it this morning on SuperTalk Outdoors. But it's, man, you can just hear this gobbler lit up, man. I mean, there's nothing better when you're out in the woods and hear that, is there?
I tell you what, that really brings it home. That when you hear that, it makes it all worthwhile. So
it really is. Hey, look, when you think about the things that you've written about, give people an opportunity to kind of understand how significant your writings are in terms of chapters and books. Give us a sense of that.
So a couple of things, one, I guess the first book that we worked on was it's a handbook for private landowners on fish and wildlife management. I sent a friend of mine, Adrian Blocker. He was the vice president of Weyerhaeuser, and he sent me a note yesterday. And he lives in South Carolina, but I sent the book to him last week, and he said, I may be in South Carolina, but this book is so relevant to me as a private landowner and helping me, whether it's managing deer, managing turkey, waterfowl impoundments, whatnot. But so that really was our first one. Did that in partnership with Adam Rocky at Mississippi State. And then the second one was on, there's no policy book in the nation in terms of a textbook for, people in the fish and wildlife profession. So the second book was on, it's called, Wildlife Policy and Law. And it's really, more for students. It goes into the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, how our nation's system of conservation was founded, which is very different than in England. In the United States, wildlife belonged to the people, versus in England, where a lot of us came from, it belonged to the king. Just like guns were the right of the king. We have very different laws based on some bad experiences in other countries in our nation's history. So we're pretty excited about that book is really helping educate a lot of students and making them be better biologists. As well.
Well, see, what you've done for me, James, I've always been involved in conservation. I love fishing. I love hunting. In fact, one of our main camp that we lease is not far from your place in Winona, down in Greenwood, between Greenwood and the hills. But what you taught me is the role that private property owners play in the efforts of conservation, particularly here in Mississippi. When you consider how much land in Mississippi, I've talked about this many, many times on this show, that you can't be true conservation oriented as a state if you don't really focus on private land. And you've really done a great job of educating me on that. I appreciate that, my friend.
Well, it's just so important. I mean, almost 90% of Mississippi is held by private landowners. And just think about it. I mean, think about the great steward that you are of your own property. That's not costing the taxpayer a lot of dollars, but our environment is really benefiting from your actions and many other private landowners' actions. And the more we can, recognize, I mean, like we're obviously talking a lot in this legislative session about trying to improve our state parks. Well, we don't have to spend those dollars, on private land like we do on public land. Both are important,
Yeah.
but certainly the private sector, can play a huge role in making sure you have good tuna fishing and we have good water quality in the Gulf of Mexico for years to come.
No doubt about that. We've got James Cummings, the Executive Director for Wildlife Mississippi. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation about what is Wildlife Mississippi and what are they all about. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors from the Foundation Studio. We have my friend James Cummings, the Executive Director for Wildlife Mississippi. James, I don't want to get too far away from this point. Coming back to the turkey not responding. Will Primos, when he talks about going out into the woods, especially around turkey hunting, but he really means it in any of the hunting that he does. That he says pulling the trigger is really not what it's all about. It's this
Right.
experience that you have. He refers to it as a religious experience. In fact, he refers to it as almost being in a prayer. That he says he gets that from church for sure, but that when he's in the outdoors, it's even more so. He couldn't be more right about that, could he?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And he, Mississippi is really, picture perfect in terms of describing what Will is talking about. I mean, if you go back almost 100 years ago when a guy named Aldo Leopold was in the state, he had surveyed a lot of states. He was one of our nation's premier conservationists. But one of the things he found out that he saw in Mississippi was of all the states that he had surveyed so far, there was one thing that Mississippi excelled in, and that's our interest in game and hunting. And he said, in that respect, Mississippi exceeds any state that he had ever surveyed. And that really gets back to what Will's talking about. I mean, that's why we have Super Talk Outdoors, and the great job that you guys are doing is this is our golf. This is what we live for. I mean, everybody may have ballet, they may have all kind of other stuff, but hunting and fishing in the outdoors is that's as Steve Azar said, that mockingbird out on the limb. This is what we're about.
It is what we're about. In fact, I want to talk to Becky Briggs here shortly. She's a foundation board member and really committed to the organization. And she and I had a chat about how important it is to bring our kids into the outdoors. I mean, I'm really committed to that. I love. Obviously, I grew up as a father with my kids in the outdoors, and now I'm in the outdoors with my grandkids. But Aldo Leopold is right. I mean, you think about everything that he said about the situation in Mississippi as it involves the outdoors. But when you add to that the coastal fishing, both the backwater and offshore fishing, some of the best in the world, right here in coastal Mississippi. And as our friend Alex said, Alex Littlejohn from the Nature Conservancy says you can go duck hunting in the morning and in the afternoon go down to the coast and catch a redfish. Where else in America can you do that at the level that you can do it here in Mississippi? We're lucky to live here, and that's why I refer to this place as the capital of the outdoors in America. I mean, that's a nice claim, and we should take it, shouldn't we?
Absolutely, and just if you think about it, put your industry hat on. I mean, look at what. Not only we have great places to recreate, look at Winchester and Oxford. Look at all what's being made there. Here in my small town of Amory, there's 2 boat manufacturing companies. Nautic Star is one of them. Avid Boats is another. Mossy Oak, Primos Game Calls. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And a lot of our outdoors is that's what supports these industries and these jobs.
Yeah.
It gets back to the comment, Will dreamed about, and developed turkey hunt, turkey calls and many other types of calls based on his experiences in Mississippi.
And now he and Toxie and others like him are ambassadors for Mississippi to the rest of the world. It's quite incredible. Hey, we're going to go back. We're going to come back to the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, but real quick, tell me kind of in an elevator speech what Wildlife Mississippi is all about.
So if you kind of go back into the early 1990s, the conservation movement in Mississippi primarily consisted of land acquisition and litigation lawsuits. But there was very little effort on the private land side and a very little effort of how can we look at the outdoors in a way that improves Mississippi's quality of life and improves our state's economy. And a gentleman by the name of Clark Reed of Greenville that was really his brainchild, and he helped form and brought in a lot of other leaders. Charles Pickering from down in Jones County, Richard McRae, Billy Van Devender, Bob Dunlap, Leela Wynn from Greenville, people all over the state. Jimmy Bryan and West Point really brought together a strong quality or group of leaders, to help form this. So it's a lot of what we are trying to do is, and we're very different than a lot of conservation groups, is we're looking at that economic side, looking at that human element, and how can we make Mississippi a better place to live, work, and raise a family, and look at doing this from a standpoint of our outdoors. I mean, if I look at a lot of Mississippi's, we rank number one in a lot of health statistics, and they're all bad, in terms of, weight or cardiovascular disease, improving our resources and places for people to recreate and exercise, and eat good, healthy food that, whether it be tuna or whether it be venison, that really helps fight cancer, for example. I mean, so there's a lot of things we can do that really improves Mississippi's quality of life. And that's what that's what we're about.
Well, James, I have really enjoyed watching your leadership and the Wildlife Mississippi Board's leadership on the coalition as it relates to the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. And it's been an incredible process over the last couple of years, but I see it's not the perfect bill, but you never get perfect. If we get to a point where there's substantial money there, so we can get federal matching funds the way that we need to be going to get them, and we've got non-governmental organizations and involving private land and all the things that we fought for. It looks like the stars are really getting into alignment here. And I've watched the Senate and House leadership. I got a call from the Lieutenant Governor specifically. Everyone seems to be aligned around we're going to get this done this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've had a chance to meet with Lieutenant Governor Hoseman and a lot of our House folks. And, look, if there's one thing that's a common thread among members of the legislature that are working on this bill is their passion for the outdoors, their passion for hunting and conservation, and their love of Mississippi. And today is a very key day in the legislature in terms of our bill. We'll kind of know by midnight tonight, are we alive, or are we going to be looking at a referendum? So, and I'm really confident that these folks are really working hard and trying to set personalities aside, and let's get good policy for Mississippi. I mean, there's $74 billion. We've gone through our Stewardship Trust Fund Coalition has gone through this list of all the programs that passed in the infrastructure bill, and there's about $74 billion in conservation funding opportunities. And this bill, if we can get this thing passed and somewhere around a $20 million number, that's going to go a long way to help taking $20 million and turning it into 80 or 100 million to benefit Mississippi.
So we had a lot of debates and discussion about whether it's going to be an allocation each year through an appropriation, or whether it was going to be, a dedicated fund through a diversion. And I think that was kind of a non-starter, the diversion for the Senate, and we certainly didn't want that to get in the way of a commitment. What I like is the language that they're using. We will do this by year two. There's at least an understanding that this has to be a multi-year project, has to be a multi-year commitment for us to continue to get the federal dollars, and we're getting that. And I think it's really good when we start hearing conversations about board governance, what the relationship between the board and the legislature is going to be, and when you get to that level of detail, you really, it sounds like we are going to get it. I think this is going to be an important day, and we're going to get to the finish line, and everyone's going to be shaking hands saying, let's go do something great for Mississippi's outdoors.
Absolutely. And yeah, there's been some hiccups along the way, and look, there's been some, Mississippians have not been perfect in terms of, how funds are being spent. And that's one of the things I really like about what the House and Senate have done, is really put good safeguards in here to prevent, any type of fraud or anything like that. And I'll say this, all of our coalition, we've never had any problems whatsoever there. But we want to make sure, and maybe this will be the model on how we run, government in terms of good governance and how we expend dollars in this state.
Well, I think one of the things I felt so strongly about, and I'm glad that it's now part of the discussion, is non-governmental organizations like the Nature Conservancy and Wildlife Mississippi and Ducks Unlimited and a large number of others. You want them out there looking for federal funds. You want them proposing projects and being competitive and making sure that we're working hard to be on the innovative cutting edge. And we're headed in that direction. And all these organizations are subject to federal audits today.
Absolutely.
So, hey. Let's get it done. Let's button it up good. Let's have all kinds of audit procedures in place, but let's not let the timeline for this be delayed any further.
Look, the last thing we want is $1 of conservation money being misspent. And so we don't want that any more than anybody else does. We want it going on the ground, benefiting the resources that we all love and enjoy.
It's been great watching the role that you have played in educating people about the importance of private land. It's been great watching the work of the Wildlife Mississippi and the coalition and the foundation. It's been something to behold. So anyway, listen, James, thank you for joining me on SuperTalk Outdoors. I really appreciate your leadership.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
When we come back, we're going to have a wonderful conversation with my friend Becky Briggs. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. You know, I'm honored every week to say that I'm doing this show from the Foundation studio, because I know this organization is working so hard to protect the heritage, our outdoors heritage in Mississippi. They're the only foundation that's actually focused on the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And the formal name for the foundation, incidentally, is the Foundation for Mississippi's Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And we shortened it to say foundation on this show, just so there's not confusion about the department versus the foundation. But they're really focused on educational projects and other wildlife efforts that the foundation is up to these days. And they're really focused on issues like the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that James and I just talked about, and that I've talked about so often here on SuperTalk Outdoors, because they know that issues like this will really enable Mississippi to kind of take it to the next level as it relates to our conservation efforts. So in short, we're really lucky to have an organization like the foundation and the dedicated volunteers who not only work so hard inside the board and inside their efforts in Mississippi, but who also provide the funding for this organization. So without any further ado, let's move over to my friend Becky Briggs. She's not only an avid outdoors woman, but she's also a member of the board for the foundation. How you doing, Becky?
I'm great, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's foggy down here in coastal Mississippi today. Where are you now?
I'm in Madison, Mississippi, in my conference room.
Good for you.
It's a little cloudy out here, but it's not foggy.
Well, I see for the Facebook and YouTube eyes, they can see behind you are obviously game photos from probably around the world, huh?
You know what? I had not noticed that. I thought I did. You see the state seal?
Yes, I do.
That comes from Eddie's lieutenant governor's office when he was there. And the others they're from Africa, Tanzania.
Well, you hear me talk. I mean, you love the outdoors, and we're going to come back to that in a second. I want to hear more about where that love comes from. But you heard James and me, and if you know, you're a regular listener, I talk all the time about Mississippi is the capital of the outdoors in America. It's a claim that we should stake, because when you may find one dimension that's better in other states, but when you add up all the outdoors dimensions we have here to enjoy, you're not going to find a better state in this nation. And the foundation is like really serious about keeping it that and continuing to sort of contribute toward maintaining it for over many years to come, aren't they?
They really are. They work hard to, as you talked about, the securing funds for them as well. And they don't start with adults. They start with the children. And that's what's exciting to me, to see the young children that they have brought in to the hunting and the fishing across the state of Mississippi. We heard Waldo speak of it last week on the archery program. That just blows my mind. And when I tell people there are 60,000 students in 430 schools in the archery program, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had Waldo on recently, and we went through the whole process and how that program has grown and what he's contributed. But his passion and the people who are involved in that, what they have done, Becky, in schools across Mississippi, and the number of kids they have engaged, it's unbelievable. It really is incredible, isn't it?
and we do the shooting teams as well. And I learned something this past week about the shooting teams. They qualify. We give scholarships. And I said, well, okay, explain this to me. Now, who gets the scholarship? Well, it's the winners of their different divisions, and they can start now at like 15, 16 years old. And if they win their division, the money that they win for their scholarship goes into a fund, and it will sit there and grow. If they're in the 10th grade, it'll have 3 years, and they keep adding to it. We had one little girl that won, and I say little girl, she won $6,000 worth of scholarship shooting in the shooting program. That's incredible.
So what's so amazing about the program is that, one of the things that Waldo points out is that a kid may not be the best soccer player, the best football player, but he can come in and learn to shoot a bow and not only learn an appreciation for safety and conservation, but also a love of the outdoors. But also, I mean, the number of kids, as you pointed out, that have gone on to get scholarships and be on college shooting teams, it's incredible to see the path of some of these kids, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing how they do that. And also, we have a fishing team now. I think Don Brazel's son's on the fishing team. So it just keeps growing and growing. But to see young kids, and I know you and I share a friend, Clint Dunn and Little Jackson from in the Delta.
Yes.
Well, I saw him this weekend at a shooting event, and so I was bragging on him and the company that he was keeping. But Jackson is just a good example of young people out in the outdoors, from people like you taking him hunting and fishing. And we have another little guy that's out at prep, and he just turned 17, but we took him on I let him use one of my bows during bow season. So he took a doe with the bow, and then his next thing was the big deer, and now he's into turkey hunting. So he and Eddie are trying to get him a turkey this year, but gosh, and he's a 4.0 student at prep.
And isn't that cool?
And his love for the outdoors, it will carry on for generations.
I lease a bunch of land from the Dunn family, and they've become super good friends. And Travis Dunn is he loves to deer hunt and duck hunt, and his brother Clint.
Travis,
he's fun. He's fun. But you're right. Jackson's my little hunting buddy. I'd rather go hunting with Jackson, just like I did with my sons when they were Jackson's age, and have the opportunity. Jackson's such a sharp young man. He's got such a bright future ahead of him. I just love spending time with him. But his passion for the outdoors is just something that's contagious, isn't it?
It's very contagious. Back to the shooting teams, I was looking at the local Kemper County newspaper over in East Mississippi, and where Eddie and I are from, and there was a picture of their shooting team. I had no idea that Kemper County had a shooting team, and those kids were excited. I mean, I told Eddie, I said, we have to bring them to Jackson, to someplace like Providence where we belong, and let them enjoy the outdoors from what we have there as well. So I'm passionate about it. I can't wait to get them all over here, because those kids usually don't have that type of opportunity. And through the foundation and the Mississippi Parks, it's just an amazing opportunity for kids like that.
I had the opportunity to go to Providence last year. What a special facility that is. But let's do this. Let's shift gears a bit. I want to know, where did your love of the outdoors come from?
They asked me that when Eddie and I married 30 years ago. The local paper said, why did you marry Eddie Briggs and want to hunt and fish with him? And well, he took me one day. Now, this is a true story. He called one day and he said, let's go deer hunting. And I said, okay, sure, sounds good. So I show up in like tennis shoes and a cute little blazer I had on at work, and in the radio business, by the way. And he said, oh, no, this is not going to work. And I said, I'll be fine. It was 28 degrees before I finally said, I can't take this any longer. My feet are frozen and I'm freezing, and I have to have something a little bit warmer, so I have to go home now. So the next day he called back and he said, you going back again? Was it fun? And I said, well, it was great fun other than I was freezing. And so from that day forward, we went and got clothes. And I'm just an outdoor person. If I was going to follow him around, I had to be outside, because that's, Eddie is passionate. So,
he is. He is.
So it all started from just hanging out with him, and then golly, it grew. And he says the biggest mistake he ever made was buy me a shotgun. And just he says, do you know what your ammo bill is a month? And I said, well, not really. I don't really care. I'm having fun. And so here we go.
That's so cool. Hey, look, I'll tell you as we get close to the end of this segment, I used to joke with my friends. There's a thing called a sea witch. A sea witch is what you put a cigar minnow on and troll it behind the boat to catch a king mackerel. And I used to joke with my friends that if I ever find a woman that can rig a sea witch, I'm going to marry her. And when I met Ann, she's a Bohanovic, Croatian heritage from the point of Biloxi. Grew up fishing and just loving fishing, and she can't get enough fishing. And my goal is to get married before I turn 30. I got married 2 weeks before I turned 30, and I married a girl who could rig a sea witch, which I think is like the absolute pinnacle of my life.
It sounds like Eddie. You sound like Eddie. And he loves for me to go now. He likes to tell his friends that I cost too much because when he has to buy one, he has to buy two. But he's joking about all that. He was out shooting at Providence the other day, and I was making the Mississippi Outdoors show I had taken the women out to Turcotte, which was a story I want to tell you. But when he got home, he said, I missed you today out there shooting with. So see, he does care. He really does.
That is so cool. Actually, we'll pick up the story with shooting with the women on the other side, but I think we have like less than a minute left in this segment. But you've literally been all over the United States shooting. You've gotten pretty darn good at it. I want to hear more about that when we come back. But we're having a conversation with Becky Briggs. You may remember her husband, Lieutenant Governor Eddie Briggs. I knew him back in the days at the Sun Herald. What a passionate outdoorsman he is. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation and find out what else is going on in Becky's life these days. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors on the foggy Biloxi Bay this morning from the Foundation Studio. And I have my friend Becky Briggs with us today. When we went to break, we're talking about her love of shooting. And she mentioned actually that she and some women taped a show from Mississippi Outdoors. I didn't want her to get started on that story and have to cut her off, when we went to break. But let's circle back, Becky. I'm interested in that. You really are focused on increasing the number of women who are involved in the outdoors. Tell me about that Mississippi Outdoors show y'all taped.
Well, they heard that I was passionate about the women and the women that we have out at Providence that are members, and we do charity shoots and we're sporting clay shooters, but every lady has a different passion. My friend June Lack is a big sporting clay person, and she was not until she and I shoot 200 targets every Wednesday together, but she watched the sporting clay part of the shooting go from 50 women that she competed with to the other day on Outdoors, she told that it was 250 women now that belong to the Sporting Clay Association nationwide, and that's pretty cool. And we went from like June and I, and now there's like 7 or 8 or 9 of us that shoot just about every Wednesday. And we went to Turcotte to make this television show for them, and they all had different ideas. One of them is a pistol expert. So she had the opportunity to shoot the pistol with Steve Moore, I think is his name, the guy that teaches shooting out there. I think that's his name. Yeah, Steve Moore. And he was impressed with her ability to handle a pistol, her form, her ability to pull the trigger and hit right where it was supposed to be. There's a group called Grits, too, that we all belong to. And the Grits started in Texas, a lady named Elizabeth Lanier. And they're into, Grits means girls really into shooting. And that's where the Grits name came from. And we're all, we just meet and we shoot and we have lunch and we go back and shoot again. And we travel to the States, sporting clay places as well. I think we have one that's going to be in down around South Mississippi somewhere. Is it McRaven? But we've been to Turcotte and we've been to MacGyver. And if you haven't visited those places, you should go. And I want to talk to the ladies just a second, because if there's ladies out there that feel like they want to learn to shoot, call me. They can find me, and we'll get them set up at a club, and we can shoot, and we'll just do some trap shooting and just practice shooting targets back and forth. And before they know it, they'll be passionate like we all are about it.
I can't agree more. By the way, Steve Moore's nickname is Reno. You may
Reno,
remember that. Well, yeah. I had him on my show recently, and what he's done to bring focus on safety and firearm shooting, especially with a handgun. He learned from a guy named Colonel Jeff Cooper. They had this gun site, very famous gun site location where people go there and learn. And he was a protege of him, but what a terrific man, and what he's done for this state across all of these incredible. I mean, you're talking about some of the best shooting facilities in the world there. It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is very amazing. We had been there to shoot, like I said, charity events where we go, well, like Miss Mississippi held an event there before the pageant, and we all shot on the team. And then Magnolia Speech, we followed them around shooting for them. It just goes on and on and on, and we just the more we do it, the more we enjoy it. And I want them to learn, and we pull for one another. And that's another thing, that the grits part that we talked about, I disagree a little bit, because they don't believe in keeping score. And yeah. I was raised, if you keep score, then it's the only way you can ever get any better. You know,
yeah,
that's the only way you're going to find out where you are. And but you know, if there's a lady out there that really wants to shoot and she wants to learn, my group would be the perfect place, and I'd be happy to start with them.
So you actually have a company called Briggs Properties, and you know, when you're not out in the outdoors, you're doing real estate and brokerage stuff. Tell me a little bit about your real life.
My real life? Well, Eddie, he's just about retired from practicing law, but I still come in, and we have an office, and we have 4 real estate agents, and we all like people, and we enjoy selling to people and getting to know a bunch of people. So we're just focused on that during the daytime, and on Wednesdays I focus on shooting somewhere in the world.
So it's every Wednesday?
Yeah, we shoot every Wednesday out at Providence.
So Wednesday is your golf.
You know what? One of my ladies is a golfer, and she has to struggle to get her time in between golf and shooting, but she can do it. She's a good golfer. She plays out at Reunion, and then she'll slip out to Providence to shoot with us, and she kind of heads up our grits for us too. But you know, we have another lady that's good with firearms. She's a rifle person, and she's also have been to Africa like we have shooting. So we have that in common with her as well.
Well, that's good. Look, someone had asked me, do I golf? I said, well, I used to golf once a year just to remind myself why I don't play golf, because what I learned is you can't be a good golfer and also enjoy fishing and hunting the way I do. So, Becky, we got less than 30 seconds left. It's been a pleasure to get to know you better.
Well, it's my pleasure too, and thank you for supporting the foundation and talking that to people, to let them know that how important it is that we do take care and conserve our outdoors, so the next generation can enjoy what you and I have when we're passionate about it.
It is so important. This has been Becky Briggs. She's a member of the foundation board, and someone who just loves the outdoors. It's been a pleasure. Have a great day. And by the way, stay safe. Stay safe when you're in the outdoors. Always put safety first. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Sounds good.